NorCal SEPA welcomes you to our Membership Community Workshop Series, highlighting local leaders and expanding the impact of somatic experiencing in the Northern California region. So I want to welcome you to our first inaugural workshop series, and we're going to be doing one of these monthly. And part of this is that the work we do as SE practitioners is a labor of love, and it's deeply transformative. And every single person who is a clinician develops tools and skills and capacities that could be gifts for other clinicians, as well as we have a tremendous amount of leaders in SE within the Bay Area. And the more we know the leaders, the more we can be inspired by their work, share their work, and the more we can get SE to become part of the central aspect of how trauma is treated in the Bay Area. Because we know that having body workers, psychologists, social workers, therapists, medical doctors who understand how to work with embodiment can have an incredible impact on how people are met, seen, and cared for. And so we've asked, so I'd like to, for just a moment, introduce the NorCal SEPA board. And the first thing I'd like to say is that this is us for now. We need more people, more faces with different diversity and life stories and depth. And we also are really trying to grow a community that supports the NorCal SE community, but then also fosters leaders within the NorCal community. So if you want to help amplify us so that we can amplify you, please join us. And would anybody be willing to, as a board member, just briefly say who you are and your role on the board?
I'll start. Hi, I'm Maureen Harrington, and I'm an SEP, body worker, and a NARM practitioner as well. And I practice in Oakland on Lake Merritt, as well as in Sebastopol for a briefer amount of time. And we've been working on this for many, many years, and we're so excited to have movement and to see faces show up in our community meetups, and just to grow the energy that is out there that can be kind of dispersed. So we're hoping to bring us into our energy field and support each other. And
Maureen is our board president. Does anybody else want to share a little bit about Gwen or Andrea?
I am Andrea Gage. I am the board treasurer, and I help try to keep the monies in place, and just really glad to be here. I'm an SEP body worker in Sacramento. Glad to be here. And I love Linda. Linda and I went through our training together. I just love seeing her.
Great. And Gwen?
Hi, I'm Gwen, and I am a board member at large, which is non-committal, but I try and help out where I needed. And I'm just so excited. I'm a therapist in the East Bay, and well, virtually, but I live in the East Bay. And I'm just so excited that we're getting this started and that we have something to offer for our members. It's been a long time, as Maureen said, getting this going. And I'm so appreciative to Mike for putting this all together, because this has really been his labor of love. So thanks, Mike.
Glad to get to be here. And one of the best things I get to do is introduce Linda Chrisman, who is an incredible practitioner of so many different varieties that it would be hard to share all of them. But what I would say is that I want to make sure that I get your bio up on the screen, because of course my computer is running slow as I'm doing this. But give me just 2 shakes of a cat's tail here, and I'll be right there. So Linda Chrisman has been doing body work for more than 30 years. She's taught and trained internationally in multiple bodywork techniques, and has a profound depth of experience in somatic experiencing based bodywork. Along with that, she's been working with the Faithful Fools, which I know she'll be introducing us to very shortly. They're a street medicine organization that goes into communities, meets people where they are, and helps folks transform trauma. I did my dissertation work on SE-based work in a homeless shelter. And one of the things that I found in that was so many people who have the experience of homelessness have tremendous and deep burdens of trauma that they're carrying around. And added to that, they often don't have somebody who can meet them as a human being, see their dignity and depth, and help them transform their lives to where they want to go. And one of the gifts about this talk is that Linda is going to be discussing with us one of the core SE skills that gets under discussed, which is how do you meet somebody where they are, challenge your own biases, let them transform you so that you can be an accompaniment for their transformation and finding out what matters with them, not ignoring the systemic and the structure that creates the oppression, but also meeting people where they are and their anchors for transformation. And this is the kind of wisdom and depth of commitment to presence that seems to be the best of the best in what we do in terms of somatic work. And so without any further ado, I'll pass over to Linda Chrisman, who's a very talented, very deep, and very impactful clinician.
Thank you, Mike. I'm impressed. One correction, the Fools is not a street medicine organization. So it used to be street ministry, now it's just a street level organization, I guess you could say. Well, I wanted to start with introductions. I know some of you, I don't know some of you. So if you could say your name, pronouns if you like, and then the question that I'm going to have us engage in, and it's all part of building community, which is the essence of my work, is if you really knew me, you would blah, blah, blah. And you can fill that in however you want. You can be as self-disclosive or as little disclosive as you want to be. But hopefully it's something that people don't already know about you. Some of you have worked together for a long time and perhaps know each other very well. So that's a little bit of a challenge for you. I'll start and then I'll pass it to someone, and then that person can pass it to someone else, and we can do it that way. So my name's Linda Chrisman, she, her pronouns. If you really knew me, you would know that I wear hearing aids now. And when I'm brushing my hair, I may in fact be lowering or raising the volume in my ears. So pass that to Eugenia. Eugenia? How do you pronounce your name?
Eugenia.
Eugenia. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Linda. Eugenia Park, she, her. Let's see. If you really knew me, you would know how much I love to play. And laugh. And I will pass this on to Denise.
If you really knew me, you would know that I feel a little bit activated when I need to speak in front of a group. Oh, and my pronouns are she, her, or they, them.
Who do you want to pass it to, Denise?
Andrea.
Thank you, Denise. I'm Andrea Gage, she, her, white-bodied. And if you really knew me, you would know that this might sound obvious, but I love glitter. I really love glitter and I love shiny things. I try not to do too much, but I also like too much. So yeah, I'm all about the glitter. Learned how to do a glitter lip. So, this one you guys, well, some of you know, maybe not all of you know, but if you really knew me, you know that I'm a baby burlesque dancer. So I'm doing some burlesque for some internal exploration. It's quite fun. Gwen.
I feel like I must really know you because I knew both of those things. If you really knew me, you would know how much motherhood has both traumatized me and enlarged me, or expanded me as a person, and how much ambivalence I have about it. And that's on tape. Maureen.
I am Maureen, she, her, and okay. If you really knew me, you would know that I was a former ballet dancer and performer in New York musicals. Woohoo! Mike?
Yeah. So if you really knew me, you would know that I really love connecting with people and have a passion for creating opportunities for individual and systemic change.
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate getting to know you all a little better. So I wanted to talk a little about the context. And one thing, I'm looking at my notes on to the right if I look over. Full disclosure. So this gathering grows out of my long-term experience with the Faithful Fools, and that Faithful Fools is a nonprofit live-work community in the Tenderloin of San Francisco. It was founded by two women of faith 25 years ago, one who's still living in the community and the other one who's now deceased. And there are 5 of us who are the staff. So I started at the Fools as a volunteer. Cynthia Merchant wrote a grant. She was friends of Carmen at the Fools. She wrote a grant to bring SE to the Fools. I was one of the people who did that. And I just stayed. So I stayed, and it's been 16 years now. So I started giving individual sessions to individual SE sessions to members of the community. And now my work has expanded and I'm part of the staff. So I have my red nose to prove that I am in fact a fool. And we freely give these out to, so I'm not going to wear it the whole time because once it gave me a nosebleed, and so I don't want to risk that. But what we do at Fools sometimes in meetings is, we'll put on a red nose when things are getting a little too serious, and we need to have some levity. And we need to lighten things up. Humor is essential for the work that I do, and humor is a big part of the Fools. So to help you understand a little more about what the Fools are about, really, the essence of the Fools is captured in our mission statement. And so Mike was going to share a screen with that so that you can read it. I'll read it out loud. And as I'm reading it, what I ask you to do is to notice what word or phrase jumps out at you. So, Mike, you want to post that? Okay. So we are called to a life of presence that acknowledges each human's incredible worth. Aware of our judgments, we seek to meet people where they are through the arts, education, advocacy, and accompaniment. We participate in shattering myths about those living in poverty, seeing the light, courage, intelligence, strength, and creativity of the people we encounter. We discover on the streets our common humanity through which celebration, community, and healing occur. Okay, so is there someone who feels foolish enough that they just would like to step in and just say what word or phrase speaks to them in this moment?
The three words that popped for me was presence, myths, and creativity.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I am just struck with being aware of our judgments and how that can be transformed.
Yes.
What stuck out for me was each human's incredible worth.
Mhm.
For me, it was judgments and humanity.
For me this time, it's community.
For me, it's we are called to a life of presence.
Mhm.
Trying to follow rules is not usually my long suit. So life of presence, shattering myths, and common humanity are the three phrases that became words.
Okay. Thank you. Want to go back to our gallery screen? The mission statement is something that's very near and dear to us as fools. And it's something we refer to constantly, and on street retreats and in other gatherings, we'll often have people read it and do just what we did, see what strikes them. Because this really, you could say the essence of what I do is in the mission statement, or how I endeavor to be. I guess that's a better way of putting it. So what do? I engage with people in the Tenderloin community. So some of these people live indoors in subsidized housing. Some live in what are called SROs, or single room occupancy hotels. These rooms are generally 8 by 10 in size. They have no cooking facility. And there are usually two bathrooms on a floor that's shared by everyone who lives on the floor. A lot of the housing in the Tenderloin is these SROs, old hotels that were built after the earthquake that have been converted into this type of housing. Some people that I engage with are in shelters. Some people cannot find access to housing or shelters, even though they'd like to be. Some people are living outdoors. Some people don't want to live in an SRO or shelter. And, Mike certainly knows about the shelters from his dissertation, which I didn't know you did that, Mike, and I want to read it. So there can be, living inside can actually be very traumatizing, even if you haven't had a history of trauma before. So not everyone wants to live inside, and not everyone even wants to come inside. Being inside might not be safe. So a lot of what I do too informally is engaged with being on the street. So So I give sessions, I give individual, I think what could be recognized as an SE session, maybe, or for some people, individual body work sessions. One person I'm actually doing Traeger. I trained in Traeger, centuries ago, but that's what's important for this person. I go into SRO rooms or people's rooms, I clean. I help people with paperwork. I write letters of support so that they can have an emotional support animal in their SRO. I go to medical appointments. I help make medical appointments. I show up in court, and showing up in court has been very important. I can't tell you the number of times, every time I show up or I show up with other fools, the judge always thanks us. And it makes a huge difference to the judge to see that the person has support from someone in the community and is engaged in the community. I help people pack up their belongings and move. Sometimes they're moving into better housing. I help people pack up their belongings when they're being evicted. I go to city and federal agencies such as Social Security, the police department. I sit with people in the emergency room, and I assist with decluttering so that someone isn't evicted for having too much stuff in their room. Sometimes I have days when I have regular scheduled sessions or appointments with people, and then other times I'm just there responding to whoever knocks on the door. Last week, for instance, I spent 4 hours one afternoon detangling the waist-length hair of a woman that I know well that was severely matted. It wasn't finished after 4 hours. So the next day, I accompanied her to the hair appointment because she recognized that she had to cut it. She couldn't maintain it. And then actually helped the stylist for another 2 hours to detangle. And the stylist was successful. And so she now has this beautiful shoulder length haircut and, this beaming smile afterwards. So, that might not look like SE, but I'm actually using all of the principles of SE in my relationships with people. Titration for one, especially detangling, have to go slowly, have to give pauses in the process. So I think it was Peter, but it might have been Steve. My memory isn't accurate, and Andrew, you might know. But one of my teachers said that SE practitioners are the guardians against overwhelm. That's from that particular teacher's perspective, that's our primary job. The stimulation, the amount of activity in the tenderloin and the stimulation from that activity can feel overwhelming regardless if a person has a history of trauma. So I'm always aware of overwhelm and the potential for overwhelm. And I'm always looking for ways to enhance a feeling of safety or relative safety. From an SE perspective, I could say most of what I do is stabilization. For some of the people that I've known for a long time, one woman I've known since I started, I've known her for 16 years, seeing her every week, sometimes every other week, sometimes once a month, depending upon me and my availability, not her. Most of the people I've known, minimum of 5 years, 10 years or more, I've been working with them. So for a few people, we may work with renegotiating the trauma if that arises spontaneously, but generally I'm working with stabilization. Sometimes re-engaging self-protective responses or fight or flight, but social engagement is the main focus, I guess you could say, of my work. So stabilization happens primarily in this work through social engagement. And I think Mike was kind of alluding to that. That's primary. It's human to human. It's our common humanity that the mission statement talks about. And I think what makes it primary, particularly in the Tenderloin or with the people I work with, humans are often the source of the threat. And so humans can both be the threat, but they also have the potential for being the healing. So relationships flourish when people feel safe and when they feel received and when they feel understood. And it's really the quality of our presence and the desire to engage with each other that I think is essential. It's important that, well, let me say it a different way. Social engagement is based upon wanting to get to know another person, genuinely wanting to know who they are, to look past what they look like or what they smell like or where they live or any of that situation, and say, who are you? And what do we have in common? So it involves a non-judgmental acceptance, but that's a really tall order. So I like the Fool's mission statement because it talks about being aware of our judgments, and everything hinges upon that, of my becoming aware of what my judgments are. And quite frankly, it's pretty easy to do that for me, just walking down the street in the Tenderloin. So I don't have to work too hard. The judgments come right up in my face. And actually, that's the beauty for me of why I love being there, because I get to see that. And so there's one person I was thinking about, a gentleman who I had seen around the Fools for, I don't know, maybe a few years this was when I was just giving individual sessions with people while I was a volunteer. And I remember thinking, I really hope he doesn't want to come see me. I really, just the way he looked, how he smelled, just everything is like, I'm doing just fine with these people, please. And of course, one day he signs up and comes in and lays down on my table. He wanted to do body work. And he turned out to be not only the sweetest person, but he's brilliant. He has background as a potter. I mean, I just was stunned, an extensive background in meditation, and was telling me the different ways that he had been working with his sobriety. It was just one of those things where it just drew me up short. It's like, okay, Linda, here you are. This is who this person really is. And he's someone that I continue to be very fond of and work with, and has grown tremendously. So part of relationship social engagement is authenticity. That's a big part. So on the most basic level, that means acknowledging I'm a white woman, I'm almost 70, I go home to a nice place to sleep and live. I've never had food insecurity or shelter insecurity. Because of my skin color and because of my clean clothes, I'm treated differently by store owners, by hotel managers, by doctors, by police. I say most because I've had my encounter with the police. And this even extends to, in the Fools, we do what we call street retreats, and most of them are 1 day. Some of them are 7 days, and I did one of the 7 days where we sleep outside. And because my hair, I seem to always look put together, you know, even if I haven't had a shower and have been sleeping outside for 7 days, I would be the one that the group would send into Safeway to ask for cardboard. And when I walked around, people didn't think I was sleeping on the street. They thought I was traveling. So I'm aware that my appearance gives me access to spaces that other people don't have and to services other people don't have. It also means I need to be aware of my boundaries and of my vulnerability. So accompaniment, which is primarily what I'm engaged with the Fools. I haven't seen you for so long. Okay. Accompaniment is primarily what I'm engaged with at the Fools. And accompaniment is a two-way interaction. So my needs and my vulnerability are important as well. And I have to be willing to also to really walk my talk. Early on, there was a person who was very challenging for me. And she took what I was saying very much to heart. And one of the things I was saying to her was to look for what brings her joy, what brings her pleasure. Because that's, as we know with SE, that's important in terms of stabilization. So one day she came in and she had borrowed a boombox from upstairs. And she said, okay, Linda, you told me to do what brings me joy. I get joy from dancing. I want to dance with you. And if you really knew me, you would know that I love to dance and I am horrible at learning steps. And it's very traumatic for me learning steps. And I'm always the one in the back of the room going the opposite way. So she wanted to do partner dancing. And I said, well, I'm not good at this. She goes, I'm a really good teacher. And this brings me a lot of joy to teach. So I thought, okay. And paused for a moment. And then I went, okay, I'll do this. It's vulnerable for me to dance with you, but I'll do this if you agree that periodically we'll stop and I'll ask you what you're feeling in your body. And she stopped and thought for a long, hard minute and went, okay, you know, it was kind of an even deal here. She was very vulnerable, feeling her body in any way. I was vulnerable dancing. And so that's what we did. So the engagement, the accompaniment that I'm talking about requires authenticity. It also requires flexibility. And it requires me, it requires, as I was saying before, being aware of boundaries, but then how do we dance with them? How do we juggle with them? Consistency is vital. And I can't stress that enough. It's only when I started being at the Fools 2, 3, now 4, sometimes 5 days a week, that consistency developed. I mean, it was fine that, I was there once a week, but that's really not enough to develop trust with someone. With one woman, it was only after 13 years of working with her that she was willing for me to come to her room and to help her sort through the piles of clothes and papers and cans and all sorts of things in her room that I judged as trash, and to her were very valuable. She was extremely anxious and defensive. And the reason that she invited me to come into her room was because she was faced with an eviction order based on health grounds, unless she removed some of the things from her room. So she then allowed me to come in and began to trust me enough that I would find another place or another use for the articles that she had in her room. In some ways, you could think of her as the supreme recycler. She had multiple uses for every single item. So, and the essence also of what I do in relation to social engagement and SE is meeting someone where they are. I think Mike alluded to that. And I was talking earlier about being curious to get to know them better. A lot of the people that I engage with have multiple diagnoses, or would have multiple diagnoses if they saw a mental health practitioner. And in the beginning, when I was at the Fools, I would find myself trying to understand. It's like, okay, is this real? Is this real what they're saying to me? What is this? Or is this crazy? And then I just realized, that's not my job. My job is not to determine what's reality or what's real or not real. It's real for the person. My job is, how do I meet this person? How do I meet them in their full glory, in their reality? So with one woman who was paranoid, and at the time I first started seeing her, she was going from shelter to shelter. Can only stay, well, some shelters you can only stay in for 30 days. If you're lucky, you can stay in one, person can stay in one for 90 days. At this point in San Francisco, the waiting list to get into a shelter is over 1,000 people. So people can get into emergency shelters for one night, but they can't stay. And the waiting list for supportive housing is even longer. It can take years. So she was going from shelter to shelter, and carrying, pushing her cart, carrying all of her items with her, because there's no storage facility. When you see people with all these bags and whatever, it's because they have to keep their possessions with them at all times. One, so that they're not stolen, but also there's no place. Well, there's no safe place where they can be. There's no place they can't leave them in the shelter. They have to take everything out. So she would come in with all of her bags, and all of her thoughts would go out. She talked about her thoughts going out, and that was what created anything that happened to her were because of her thoughts going out. So if she was attacked, it was because her thoughts went out. If she was molested, it was because her thoughts went out, whatever it was. And I somehow stumbled upon the fact that she had been involved with Buddhist meditation, and mostly with Tibetan, with Vajrayana. So I asked her if she had, what she liked the most, and it was the Heart Sutra. And she could recite it from memory. So for, I don't know, weeks, we just sat and chanted the Heart Sutra together. And then she would get up abruptly, go to the bathroom, come back and say, "You're brilliant, you're brilliant." And then she'd leave with all her bags. And slowly she started to trust me, and then became connected with Carmen, who was the founder of the Fools. And Carmen helped her get the identification that she needed and actually get into housing in an SRO. And most importantly, was able to find a psychiatrist who then stabilized her mental state without medicating her to almost total sedation. A previous psychiatrist, she was so over medicated, she could barely get out of bed in the morning. And that was the life she had to choose between, was sleeping all the time or having her thoughts go out and being fearful of. She's now receiving the care that she needs, and is quite a delightful presence. She has a very dry sense of humor, and it was her whose hair that we were working with. And when I asked her after the haircut, how was she feeling? She said, "Well, that was a lot. That was a lot. My hair's. I was very attached to my hair, and my hair was very attached to me." That was a joke, Linda. Okay. She's always saying, that was a joke, Linda. So. Orienting is also important in stabilization, which we know. And what I've been finding for myself, it's important for me, but it's important for me to be aware of what I'm orienting to. So am I just looking at the literal shit that's on the sidewalk to avoid stepping in it? Or am I also seeing the gorgeous murals? And there's so much art in the TL. Or am I also, seeing the guys who are smiling on Leavenworth, playing their music that they get together every day, every afternoon, they're out playing some music that's really danceable. So that's part of the inner questioning of myself. Is my orienting defensive? Is it engaging, stable? Is it both? And am I orienting towards what separates me, or am I orienting towards what connects me with the people that I see and meet? And those are fundamental questions that the fools have in general on the street retreats. It's like, what holds me separate, what keeps me separated, and what connects me still. And those are questions that I endeavor to have with me all the time, whether I am working with someone individually or whether I'm walking around. It's like, okay, what separates me? What do I believe separates me, and what connects me? So, you know, the basic self-help somatic practices that we all know, the grounding and the different self touch holds and breath work. You know, it's all this one, in case you don't know, that I love this one for containing. I learned this actually through body dynamics. So these muscles have to do with, well, Maureen can speak to this from NAR too, early need. And so when you hold under here, you're supporting those early need. And then the shoulder here from containment. But of course it can be any form, but this in particular, I like. So I will teach this hold, other holds to people that I know, simple grounding things, breath work. And what I've seen is, you know, what we all see, that as someone's nervous system or physiology becomes more settled, then actually they can come into relationship with another person. And then through coming in relationship one-on-one with someone, that can then expand to community. And what I've seen so much in working at the Fools, it's really the community that is the primary resource. So I see the relationships that I have with people as kind of steps along the way to that community, and that I'm part of that larger community too. So it expands the holding in that way. I also use herbalism as a way of engaging with people and increasing relationship. Every year I pick lavender up in Sonoma County, and I make lavender water, and I hand that out to people in spray bottles, and they spray themselves, they spray their pillows, they spray the air. Lavender has been shown to help with anxiety, depression, insomnia. But it's also even more than the the lavender is wonderful, but it's the act of giving something to someone. You know, it's the act of giving and receiving, and then people give back to me. I also make a pain salve out of cannabis that I grow, because one of the women that I see was saying that the cannabis salve that she bought worked really well, but it was really expensive. And I thought, you know, I know how to do this. I could do this and make some. And now I have all kinds of people bringing me their weed to make salve out of. So, you know, relationships are reciprocal, and that's part of it. And I think, you know, in terms of my own growth in this is, you know, it's much easier for me to give than receive. And so, you know, but relationships are reciprocal, and accompaniment is reciprocal. And so it's about me receiving too, whether it's weed or receiving the text that people sent me when my mom was dying, or we have real personal relationships. So I spoke some about safety. And that basically I'm always looking for any way of increasing safety. So when I walk down the street, wherever I am now, I walk around people. I never walk through a group of people. Actually, I'm not thinking of my own, I am thinking of my own safety, but I'm thinking of the safety of the group, that I don't want to interrupt the flow of that conversation. So I don't walk in between people, I'll walk around. Let's see what else. Oh, an example that I like for the safety that comes through community is redwood trees. That redwood trees have very shallow roots, but and they're very tall. So with the shallow roots make them very susceptible to coming down when there's strong winds. But redwood trees grow in clumps, and so their roots interconnect with each other. And that's what keeps redwood trees standing, is the interconnectedness of their roots. It's the lone redwood tree that's the one that's the most vulnerable. So I'm just going to say a little bit more, and then I want to open this up and get your comments. I think, what I've been emphasizing is that accompaniment is based upon understanding our shared humanity, our shared experience of being humans, that we all want to be safe, we all want to be loved, we all want to have enough to eat, we all want to have shelter, and we all want to be treated with respect. And part of, I'd say, what's value with accompaniment is recognizing that, and recognizing that my well-being is inseparable from someone else's. Kind of like the example that I just gave of never walking through a group of people. So that's good for that group. They don't get disrupted, but it's also good for me, because if they're disrupted, they may be more agitated towards me. I mean, it goes both ways. There's a quote that's often referenced to a particular woman, Lila Watson, who's an Aboriginal activist. And she actually has said that she prefers that the attribution be to Aboriginal activist group Queensland in the 1970s. And so what this group said was, if you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. So accompaniment requires radical honesty, discernment, authenticity. There are different boundaries than in private practice, flexible boundaries. I'm more personal. And my job, quote unquote, is not to renegotiate trauma or even to help someone relax or be different in any way. It's to build connection. It's to build connection both internally, capacity to connect with their own, with interoception, their own intrinsic sensing, to connect with me, with another person, and then connect even bigger in community. And so, excuse me. My work includes connecting with building managers. I I have a relationship with the assistant manager of the building that the woman lives in who was almost evicted. It's like relationships with Urban Alchemy, which are the I stumble every time I try to describe Urban Alchemy, but it's a group of people that have a presence in cities now across the US in order to further peacefulness on the streets. There's a lot of controversy with Urban Alchemy, but they're just a different group of people that I have relationships with, and that also are want to be safe as well. Okay, I want to open this up because I have talked a lot, and I would love to hear from you if you have questions, or I'm going to talk about your experiences or comments, or there's something else you would rather know about that maybe I know.
As we're shifting gears, can we go ahead and give Linda an incredible hand for this inspiring talk and big-hearted presence she brings? And also just want to name that there's really big challenges in that big-hearted presence for me personally that I'm really grateful to start to grapple with from what you've said. So thank you for that inspiration. And if you could either raise your hand on the screen or raise your hand on your little reactions button, it'll help us track. You're also free to just unmute and ask Linda. Andrea.
Hi. Thank you, Linda.
Hi, Andrea.
Interesting in for myself of just tracking myself just to see the breadth of experience of being in this work for 20 years. So there's points where I can feel settled around what you're talking about, and other parts that feel panicked, even just, as you're talking about it. And because my first thing I wrote down was safety. And I was just curious about what helped you, maybe just experience, but because it sounds like everything's in a trajectory, but like what helped you be safe in the Tenderloin? Because when I even think of being in the Tenderloin, I immediately go to my judgments of it's not safe. And I can bring in my looking for the singing, looking for the art, but I always have that background safety. So can you just talk a little bit about your thoughts about safety? And
Sure. Before I started volunteering, the structure was that all of the volunteers needed to do a street retreat, a one-day street retreat. This is something that that the Fools do regularly. And the street retreat basically is a time when we go out and walk around the Tenderloin, have lunch at either Glide or St. Anthony's or any other place that has a free lunch. And it is a meditation retreat in the sense that what we're interested in is just what you're talking about, Andrea, our internal reaction. And so the questions that we walk with are the ones I mentioned earlier, but what holds me separate, what keeps me separated, and as I walk the street, what connects me still. And I too had a similar, but I too had my fears of the Tenderloin. Had heard all kinds of stories about the Tenderloin. You have to avoid the Tenderloin, and at most, if I had to, I would drive through based upon common knowledge that you don't go to the Tenderloin. Everybody knows that. And I had a delightful time. What I discovered was there's a community of people on the streets, that people were friendly, wanted to get to know me. Lots of people knew each other. Now, this was 16 years ago, and the Tenderloin has changed a lot, but there's still basic. It's still basically the same in some fundamental way, which is for a lot of people who are on the street is their living room. They may live in an SRO, but there's no space in that SRO. So to socialize, they come out onto the street. And there are people living on the street, either in tents or some people not even in tents. And then now there's a lot of dealing that's happening and drug use on the street. But quite frankly, the people using are not interested in me. They are, they're mostly interested in preventing themselves from being dope sick. Not even at this point, it's not even that there are that many people that are using to get high. They're using because if they don't, they're going to feel absolutely wretched. So they're not a safety concern to me. And the dealers don't care about me either. I mean, they may say, hey, mama, or, whatever, but I just smile and walk on by. And then I use, I use street smarts in the sense that I don't walk between people. But what I discovered then was that we wanted the same thing. We wanted to be, we wanted connection. We wanted to be respected. We wanted to have enough to eat. One man that I was talking to for quite a bit excused himself and he said, I'm so sorry, but I really have to use the bathroom. And he goes, and I'm so sorry. And I'm so embarrassed because there's no bathroom here that I can use. Now there are in the Tenderloin, there are a few places where there are 24-hour toilets, but it took until a couple years ago fighting to get 24-hour toilets in the Tenderloin on the street. And I'm not even sure that they're 24-hour now. I think they close at 8, the few that are there. So if someone won't let you into their building, and most people won't, the only place to urinate is against a wall. And this man was deeply embarrassed and said, I'm going to go around there, but it's the only place I can go. That was new to me to realize, oh my God. And then I also walking around saw there's amazing art. There are lots of kids. There's a park that's gorgeous. And then I also discovered that after a while, after lunch, I was completely overstimulated, and I spent most of my time walking around looking at the sidewalk and looking for a place to sit where I might have some peace. And there were very few places to sit because most places walking around the TL, if you start looking at it, that there might be a low concrete wall, but it will have barbs on it, or it will have something on it that prevents people from sitting. The structures, that architecture that I take for granted, and I think a lot of us take for granted in the neighborhoods we live in, that welcome people, that say, this is a nice place, you want to spend time here. It's the opposite in the TL. It's set up to have people not spend time there. So I don't know if what I just said now made any difference in terms of adding to a sense of safety, Andrea, but it was after walking around like that that I realized I really don't have anything to fear. And yes, there are things that happen in the Tenderloin, but there are things that happen anywhere. I mean, these days in Oakland, Piedmont Avenue, kind of all kinds of break-ins and people being held up at gunpoint. So I don't know if that helps you with.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's always just a curiosity of you know, what they have learned, what the fools have learned to be able to have you guys out on the street and keep you safe. It's interesting, you know, I mean, it sounds like they have their street smarts that they can impart quickly in a
Well,
way, you know?
it's actually really the street smarts is the openness and curiosity to meet people.
Yeah.
It's really that. I have more. The people that I meet, the people that I encounter in the Tenderloin are friendlier than any other place that I walk in the Bay Area. I walk around Lake Mary, no one talks to me. I'll say hi, no one smiles back or talks to me back. If I take BART all the time, so I get off at Civic Center and then I just walk up Hyde. Tenderloin, I'm not Tenderloin, the Fools is on Hyde in between Turk and Eddy. And all the time there's someone, someone smiling at me, saying, "Hey, you're looking good today." It's like, "Oh, thanks." Or if I say to someone, "Wow, I really like your hat." "Oh yeah, thanks." People engage. One time I was sometimes when I walk up from BART, things are good. I'm in a good mood. Other times I walk up from BART and I'm just angry and I'm disgusted by the shit, by the drug use, by all of it. And so this one day, it was one of those days, and I was just in my dark cloud about this. And I get to the Fools, just right in front of the Fools, and this woman says to me, "Hi." And so I stopped and I said, "Hi." And she goes, "How are you doing?" And I said, "It's just one of those days when everything is like, I hate everything." And she goes, "I have those days too, and when I have those days, I just think about how fortunate I am." And I'm looking at this woman going, I don't know where she lives, but it looks like she might hang out on the street or whatever. And I'm just like, "Oh, Linda, just get over yourself." And that actually is what I encounter over and over with people. If I ask someone how they are, they always tell me something that's good, something that speaks to their resiliency. And that's what I see in the TL, the incredible resiliency of people and the creativity. As well as the effects of living in an area that the city has literally designated as a containment zone. The Tenderloin is where the Bay Area comes to for their drugs. We regularly see people pull up in really flashy cars. It's not just, the drug use is not just the people that you may see and think of. We think of the chronically homeless as being, addicted, and some are, some aren't. The drug use, Tenderloin is where, people in the suburbs buy their drugs. So that context, I think, is also important. It's like, how is it that we have become scared of people who are poor?
Right. It did help me hear you phrasing that they're poor. Their situation is, as opposed to me judging other aspects of the poverty. But really, this is a poverty issue.
Yes.
Really, hearing that. Yeah.
And then you add race into it.
Right.
And you add gender identity into it. And you add, not being able-bodied into it. Or you add all of that, you're a Black transgender woman who's impoverished.
Has trauma.
with trauma, right?
Yep.
And the trauma can simply be, it doesn't have to be historical. It can be simply present day from presenting as a Black transgender woman who's impoverished.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking about that, because I think it's a common perception, and that's why we do street retreats, and we have immersions where high school students and junior high students and college students will come, sometimes live at the Fools for 2 weeks, and we get them engaged in the community. And it's very different from going and serving lunch at St. Anthony's or Glide. Instead, they work with Safe Passage. So every morning they're going out with people in Safe Passage to help people go across the street safely. Anyway, the community is what keeps me safe and what helps me feel safe. Yeah.
Gwen has her hand raised, Linda.
Yeah, Gwen. Hi, Gwen.
Hi, I want to thank you so much for this presentation. I feel so moved by your truly personal investment in the work. Like it's like you said, it's that reciprocal community process. I'm so moved by that. And I'm just really thinking about, I'm a mental health therapist, and never really worked with the homeless population, but did many years of like Medicaid services that are for the people who are the kind of the next level up on the economic ladder, like, that have full scope Medi-Cal and live in substandard housing, a lot of cases. And, I could travel, go to people's homes and meet them wherever, like that type of Medi-Cal. That's a really good thing about it, is you can bill for services in the field. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of great things about that, right? But I would always feel like this is, I think there's more services now than kind of when I was in the thick of that, because there's more awareness of, social determinants of health. I'm just so aware of the difference between providing a mental health service and, there's been some reform since I kind of left that work. I don't know what's happening now, but having to pathologize people, and this whole idea of like individual, like it's an individual pathology rather than a systemic failing. And that, the work that you're doing just to like be human and provide support that all humans should get in the course of life, rather than having to be on Medicaid, or that there needs to be a special program for. My concern is, like, in recent years, as much as I'm happy that there's more funding for mental health services, that's become like the answer to everything. Like, people are homeless because of their mental health issues, right? Like, I think that's a big perception, or people with substance use are in it because, oh, my neighbor's dog's on the loose again. I have the urge to run out there and get it, but it'll probably run away from me. But it's not the cure-all, and so I'm just so appreciative of like how much the work that you're doing needs, really so much more needs to be the kind of work that needs to be done. And I know there's a lot of that, but like this growing idea that just what we need is more mental health, has concerned me for a while. And I don't know if you like what you're seeing in terms of how that's playing out in your work with the unhoused population, or, if you're sort of getting any drift of that. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's a coherent question, but given the context, maybe you can answer.
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you're saying, particularly what you were bringing up, that so much we associate being homeless with mental health issues, or that people are unhoused because they have mental health issues. And certainly some people do. But the research is showing that most people, at least in San Francisco, I think it's at least 60–70%, I have to remember my percentages, who are unhoused in the last year are people who had housing and they lost their jobs, or they had a health issue. I mean, it's because of economics that they're ending up on the street. And this is just my perspective, being on the street for any length of time would certainly, make one very susceptible to developing mental health problems, regardless if one had a propensity for that or not. Sleeping out, I remember Carmen saying, sleeping out on the street for 7 days, and she was feeling a lot of pain. She understands why people take the oxycodone or whatever that's offered on the street. I think there is, it's two ways, Gwen. In one way, just as you're saying, there aren't enough services. I have had a heck of a time trying to find a psychiatrist for someone who was in between, had Medicare and had supplemental Medicare. So people would take Medicare Advantage, or if she had no money, they take her. So there are more services needed. We can't get people. There are people who want to go into rehab, and there just aren't the rehab facilities. So the services are needed, but at the same time, I do hear what you're saying, which is this idea that if we just throw services at people, that will take care of the problem. And seeing people as a problem rather than people as people and engaging with them. And the Fools is also engaged with advocacy. That's we have the 4 main areas of accompaniment, advocacy, education, and the arts. And so much of the advocacy, mostly Sam is involved with this, and that goes on, is advocating to get community members' voices heard. So to have people who live in the TL on the San Francisco City commissions or committees that are deciding what to do. And it's very, very difficult to get that to happen. And over, various plans are made, various money is thrown at different organizations. And what I hear from the people who I know who live in the community is, been there, done that. We've seen this again and again and again, and it doesn't work, and no one's listening to us about what it is that would really be helpful. So, whether it's a new team on the street, or it's a fancy new name here. Yeah. So appreciate you speaking to that.
Thank you, Gwen, and thank you, Linda. This is incredibly powerful. Linda, do you have time for maybe one more question?
I do. Yeah.
And I would encourage those of us who might feel that our voices, oftentimes we don't centralize them, or that they don't matter, to take the risk and step into the space, because your voices really do matter.
I'm just saying hello to the real Noelle.
Hello. So wonderful to see you all and to hear your amazing sharing of 15 years of service.
16 now, yeah.
15.
That's my primary work now. I've squeezed my private practice. I just see 5 people now, and it's the Fools. So,
Well, I have a question, and I saw Maureen's hand come up.
I have time for both if everyone else does, but that's.
Yeah, so my apologies for joining late. I had to reschedule something this weekend, and then didn't have this on my calendar, even though I had signed up. So I missed it in my scheduling, just my goof. Yeah. So the essence I'm hearing you say, I'm wanting to hear what your wish or vision is. And I'm hearing it quite clearly about community. And it coincides. I was the volunteer coordinator for urban ministry of Palo Alto many years ago. And our mission statement was to be a community of people. So that was our goal. And we provided services, many services, but we did them in a way to promote community. Like, you need to come down to the drop-in center where there's coffee and donated Rebecca muffins to get your pass to go to the clothes closet. So we're not just getting them clothes. We're like, come hang out, be part of the community. So I heard you say you lead retreats, and how does that vision of community extend beyond people who are called to be as committed as you are, and into, just the greater community?
In a lot of different ways with the schools that we work with. We, for 3 years, had a weekly ongoing call with University UCSF medical school. And so on the call would be medical students, could be doctors, could be people from the Fools, could be people living in the TL community. It started during the pandemic as a way where one of the doctors contacted Sam and said, we have all these medical students who want something to do. And, there's the pandemic. And Sam said, great, let's get community members together. And so they had a conversation and said, well, we need hand sanitizers, we need masks, we need blah, 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 blah. And so the med students said, we can do that. And, the next day there's gallons of hand sanitizer, et cetera. That group continued. And what grew out of that in collaboration, actually the lead was taken by another group in the Tenderloin called Skywatchers, which is an arts activist, incredible group of people. What that grew out of that was what were called community grand rounds. And so that people who live in the TL were interviewed about their medical experiences, and generally it was medical trauma. And then those have been edited. So now I think there are 4 different 1-hour videos, and they're shown to different groups in UCSF. So I know that mental health group or the psychiatrist saw it, other residents, interns. And so that collaboration is expanding and continuing. One of the things that I'm getting involved with now is there's a group of new med students who are really interested in bringing trauma-informed care into surgery and into the emergency room, but particularly surgery. Yeah. And so I've been speaking with them, some other community members too. We had a day-long event brainstorming all kinds of things, including having the emergency room be more like a spa when you walk in. You have a greeter and you can have cookies for the person that comes with you. And but there are some of these med students who are just hot for changing this whole system. So that's just one way. There are lots of different pentacles, or I guess you could say, or roots that are entwined via the Fools and other organizations in the TL and outside. And we're always looking for ways to expand that.
So it looks like service with relationship leading, like that's
the relationship leads, yes. And then if there's service needed, then that follows, but it's really the relationship.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you.
And Linda, along those lines, if I were to ask a question on follow up on Noel, I would say, would you recommend people doing a 1-day retreat as a
Oh,
deepening part of their life?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have anything scheduled right now, but if anyone's interested, let me know. And, you know, you can maybe join a group of other students, or we're looking at, okay, how do we start this up again? We used to have them regularly before the pandemic, and um, we're juggling a lot of balls, but that's one of the balls we want to pick it back up again. Maureen, is there time for Maureen to ask her question?
Absolutely. I also want to say that I want to respect time as much as
Yeah.
possible. So if we can get
People need
Maureen's
to
question
go,
and then
understand.
call it closed so people feel the boundary of the container. That's my only heart.
I'll keep it brief, but I'm so incredibly touched by what you're doing and how you are just in life, and have continued to be touched by you in our peer consultation group over the years. And one word you just slipped in there was, I don't know if it was table work or body work, and it just sort of like jaw dropped me on the inside. I was like, oh, of course. And just thinking about all the implications of how titrated that would have to be, how safety is, what your contract is, and how incredibly healing that could be
Mhm.
for an aching body, traumatized body, to have something different in their day. Those are just sort of, I don't know about bringing too much of a question into it right now, but at this hour, but if you could just say a little bit about how you brought that into what you were doing or are doing.
Yeah, so, people hear about me in different ways, and oftentimes it might be Carmen or someone saying, you should go see Linda, go talk to Linda. And then, if we do that, then I'll say, well, ask them, obviously, what they want to do, and then say one option, if you want, is to lay on the massage table, and we can use touch, it's gentle touch to just help your body relax if you'd like that. And some people want that and some people don't, but yes, it's an incredible respite. First to have the choice to be fast, and then to be, just for all our clients, being able to discern where they would like touch, where they would not like it, but also to have, tender touch is really phenomenal.
Tender without an agenda.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Touch without an agenda is, of course, that's the essence of Rosen work, and that was my training. My primary training in touch was Rosen Method Bodywork. So yeah.
So can we unmute a little bit and make a little noise for Linda? Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Linda.
I always think about clapping as our kind of like Western ritual for
Yeah.
for connecting and sharing heart, and so I'm glad we're doing the ritual. And also I just want to say, Linda, I am just touched beyond words, grateful for it. I feel deepened as a person for what you're doing, and also challenged in ways to become a better clinician and to grow. And I think in many ways, this workshop series grew out of a gift and a donation from Mark Schuler, who is an incredibly powerful body worker.
Right.
Okay, I no longer can officially make it through this without tearing up, but you know, here I am. And before he passed, one of the things he wanted to do was to give people who have this power to touch people's hearts with this ability to be connected, a way to share and deepen each other. And so it feels like a gift to have you be our inaugural person, because I feel like it touches so deeply the idea that Mark had set up for this thing to be here. So thank you for that. And also I want to highlight the fact that Linda is an incredibly powerful person, and we all are in our different ways. And I'm really grateful that the Bay Area is now going to be start centering our leaders, our gifts, so that we can grow from each other and share it. And this feels like a great invitation to the power of community that can happen through sharing our gifts with one another. Anybody else want to say a few closing words before we just wrap up?
I want to say one thing. Sean Wilder was my supervisor, and what she said to me, I've carried in my heart. I'll pass on to you. She's, Linda, if you're going to work with big trauma, you have to have big fun. That is sage advice.
Yeah.
So,
All right. And so here we are in this containment, and you know, the world is full of all of this, you know, both sides of the pendulum. So let's have big enough fun that we can hold the heaviness of the trauma in ways that it creates a resource that matches and integrates it. And I feel really blessed and grateful to get to be with y'all in this community, and wish you all well in your next endeavors, and be on the lookout for the community workshop series. I'll send links in the chat to folks. Challenge you to connect with the faithful fools and in some way or another, and be on the lookout for our next workshop series. Oh, the link to the video will be sent out to the group here too, as well as shared on our circle.
Yeah. And keep telling your friends and colleagues to come on in and check it out. Thanks.
all right.
Yay.
Adiós.
Bye.
NorCal SEPA welcomes you to our Membership Community Workshop Series, highlighting local leaders and expanding the impact of somatic experiencing in the Northern California region.